Erica Crawford, welcome to the Sipping Point. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Laurie. It's so exciting to meet you as well, finally.
Well, you're sort of a female icon. I don't know if you feel that, but that's what I'm calling you here. After creating and co-founding one of the most successful New Zealand brands out there, Kim Crawford, and now starting your second brand, Loveblock. Tell me a little bit about that journey and how you wanted to really focus Loveblock differently than you did your brand in the past.
So Kim Crawford, of course, it was such exciting times for New Zealand wine because it was right at the, just at the beginning, and people had no idea where New Zealand was in the first place. And the flavors from Sauvignon Blanc that came were just so big and bright. And when you give a kid Coca-Cola for the first time, for instance, the wonder on their faces, people have really had that response. And so that was really exciting. And we worked mainly in the US because we had two toddlers and we couldn't really afford the time or the money away to go to Europe, where with the UK it's a natural sort of allegiance with New Zealand, but we chose to go to the US. And the funny thing is about the explosion of New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is it sort of started happening in about 2003, 2000 ish. And what happened then was actually Lord of the Rings started winning a lot of Oscars and gongs, and by then New Zealand, Middle America became aware of New Zealand, and then the whole thing just went. And by then Kim Crawford had really good distribution, so there's a bit of luck, a bit of good timing, and a lot of hard work in that. But it's now been, when did we hand it over to Constellation? 2007. So there's been a little bit of water running under the bridge, and I think they're doing a good job. Yeah.
Yes, that is a few years, right? Seems like yesterday, but you're right. It is an iconic brand that, put New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs on the map, and maybe even New Zealand winemaking for that matter on the map. I got engaged in New Zealand, so it is a place that's in Cooper's Beach in the North Island. And so I have been there. I did not get to your winery, of course, but I hope to do that next time. It is an absolutely beautiful place. But now you've started Loveblock, and we're going to taste 3 of your amazing wines. So tell me what you wanted to do differently with Loveblock, and then we're going to taste your Pinot Gris first. But just sort of how your focus, your vision for the Loveblock brand.
Well, of course, the approach from a business point of view is entirely different. With Kim Crawford, we were really the first people to do that, what we call the grower model, big and good, in that we bought from growers, we made it at someone else's winery, bottled it at someone else's winery. All we really did was to make a brand and make the wine to put in the brand. So there was not the preamble of bricks and mortar. So that actually made it quite affordable and easy. Now, of course, the majority of New Zealand wines or wine brands are run in that way. And it's a really good model, it's a really profitable model. And so the second time round, I suppose it's a little bit more grounding for me. I mean, I think organics has always been quite important to me, and it gradually started changing my life in my 30s. So this was really the opportunity to live my values. So it was the obvious thing to do this organically. Mm-hmm. We experienced practitioners now. We've been doing it since 2008. So we've learned a lot. We've made a lot of mistakes. But I think the beautiful thing that I see in the wines now is as the vines are getting older and the impact of organics and the impact of single vineyard really shows us a different balance and a different level in the wine. It gives it also, you'll see particularly, we'll do the Pinot Gris just now, is the texture. I really think organic wine zaps a little bit in.
Lovely. All right. Well, let's do that then as we're getting into it. I have the Pinot Gris, and I'll just, this will be podcast audio, but also some people, will watch it on the video. So tell me, I think we connected over a video that you made actually on Instagram, and I love your Instagram post about Pinot Grigio versus Pinot Gris, because it is the same grape, but the expression of it from what you produce in New Zealand versus an Italian Pinot Grigio is so different. Tell me about this wine and what you what you hope to achieve with it and what we have.
So obviously with Pinot Grigio, they pick the grapes quite early, so around about 19 bricks. Mm-hmm. We pick it much later, so we pick it about 22, 23.
Okay. And
because the flavors of Pinot Gris are actually quite delicate, so you've got to wait for the flavors to come on. And then I think the Alsace producers even go a little bit longer. What we've seen with stressed vines, such as in organic management and some vine age, is that you can manage the alcohol and the sugar much better. So you don't have to go to 24 bricks to get the flavor profile that you want. We see that we can pick it earlier now. We get the flavors that we want, therefore we have less sugar and therefore we have less alcohol. So,
I love that.
Yeah, so I think, and here, give me the sugar so early in the morning. You'll see that it's basically a beautiful, delicate fruit bowl of, for me it's always melons wrapped in prosciutto. Where we are, we've got a slight savory tone at the nuance at the back of the wine. So the vineyards, this vineyard's been under organics now for 17 years. And we can see there's a layer in there that's not clean stainless steel.
Yes.
Because we use, a portion of the wine goes and ferments in concrete egg and also in old oak. So we're quite happy to forego big aromatics for texture.
I was going to say, I love that it just seems so balanced all around. Like, I love the smooth roundness of it. You have the acidity there, but it's not the smack your in the face acidity that you get with, some New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs. But it has that lovely, delicate melon and other flavors on the palate that just seem to all come together. I'm a huge Pinot Gris fan, whether it's Alsatian. I love this. I also love Oregon Pinot Gris. I don't know if you drink these as well.
Isn't it?
Yeah, and so different.
And so different.
The way it expresses. I don't know if people would necessarily say New Zealand, what grapes? They wouldn't probably come up with Pinot Gris right away, but definitely I think people should give this a try. What's your favorite cuisine or pairing if you were to have some food with this?
I think for me it's that beautiful Friday night wine where it just gives me joy. So it's perfectly good by itself. But with food, because the flavors aren't big and screaming, it's really good with things like Cambodian food, with Japanese food, all your sushis and sashimis. It just really, especially if you have a little bit of pickled ginger in there, it just lifts the sweet fruit flavors in the wine. So I definitely have seen an uptick in interest in sales in the US in the last 4 years or so, and I think it's because Oregon is becoming a lot more prominent. So people are becoming aware of Pinot Gris. Yes. And not only thinking they're going to get something, more linear and steely like typical Pinot Gris.
Love that. And I notice all of your wines, and this is probably not, big deal for you, but are all screw caps, of course. And the New Zealanders, the Australian winemakers, you guys have been using the screw caps for so long. It's taken some other regions a while to kind of catch on, and still there's a little bit of resistance here when someone sees a screw cap versus a cork. Why do you feel like the screw cap is perfect for your wines?
We've still got some of the old Kim Crawford wines, and an 02 Riesling, for instance, is absolutely still, of course it's developed, but it's still together and beautiful, and I think the development happens a little bit more slowly under screw cap, but you can keep that wine going for years,
Love that. And speaking of that, how long would someone, if they invested in getting a case, say, of this Pinot Gris, how long would you typically say this would sell or last for?
5, 6, 10, 15 years.
Okay, wonderful. Because people, I think, are always wondering, if I buy a bottle, is this worth it to save, or do I need to drink it right away? So that's, I think that's helpful And I'm a huge sushi fan, so I love the idea of this Pinot Gris and sushi. Now I'm getting hungry
Yeah,
because here it's almost dinner time. So
I'll also tell you a little trick with the screw cap.
yes,
You know, it lasts for about 2 weeks in the fridge if you keep it closed. So you don't have to do it. Yeah, it's definitely.
so no worry about preserving it with
don't worry about
the
it. Just keep it in the
vacuums or
fridge.
all those
Yeah.
things. Okay. Perfect, and that is a nice plus over a a traditional cork, where then you're going to have find something, because that cork is not going to be the best closure
Yeah, I
to
had a
keep it.
beautiful bottle of South African Sauvignon Blanc the other night, and I had 2 glasses, put it in the fridge with a cork in, and the next day, unfortunately, it had oxidized. So that's the difference, yeah.
No, just reminding you to finish the bottle next time.
Absolutely.
Love that. All right. So I know, you've touched a little bit about your focus on organic, and we're going to taste one of your Sauvignon Blancs that you do some really unique things to preserve it and avoid adding any sulfites. But you're also vegan friendly, as I see on your bottles as well. And people laugh sometimes when I talk about vegan wines, because they're like, well, it's grapes, so it's all vegan. So tell me a little bit about and you have a great designation on the bottle so people know that it's vegan friendly. What does that mean? Why isn't it vegan to start with?
If you asked me this 20 years ago, I would have never thought we'd do that, because I just didn't think it'd ever be a thing.
Right.
But our daughter went vegan at about age 16, 17, and she really pushed us into that direction. And with more products available now, so we just really replaced the old traditional things like isinglass gel with pea protein.
Okay.
In the floating, and so it's quite easy.
And if people don't know, tell them what the isinglass.
Isinglass is something they use to basically use in wine to pick up muck, and it's actually fish gut. And the other thing is gelatine. So after the press, it goes to a tank, and then all the muck floats to the top, and it sticks in this gelatine, and now in the pea protein. So it's quite easy to get it off the rest of the good stuff that you want from the tap at the bottom.
Yes. Now we're gonna move in tasting our TEE Sauvignon Blanc, and I know you're gonna tell us all about it. But real quick, and this is probably an easy question, the label. Tell me a little bit about the flowers here. Are these have to do with your cover crops and those sorts of things, or what prompted this label? Because it is so beautiful.
It's quite interesting, if you look at any organic vineyard, it always looks scruffy. There's always weeds and things growing under the vines. And if you look at a vineyard that's got herbicide sprays, it's very tidy under the vines, but there's also nothing growing. And, of course, when we did this label, I wanted to do something else, but it was too gloomy. And that's the first thing you see in an organic vineyard, really, is the dandelion. And if you don't mow your lawn, that's the first thing that will pop up. And it's actually quite a useful little thing. And here's a sweet story that I didn't know, that I learned from David Attenborough, is that the dandelion is the only plant that holds all 3 of the celestial bodies that affect our daily lives. So obviously the sun is the little petal. I mean, it's the little yellow flower. And I don't know if you do yoga.
I have done,
yes. Do the sun salutation in the morning.
Yes.
Because the little flower closes at night, and then it opens at sunrise, and it follows the sun and all the energy that it brings. The moon is represented by the seed puff.
Yes.
Of course, in our lives, it actually makes quite a difference, how we do things. For instance, it has an effect on the different days, and when we pump, things like when you bottle, when you pump over, and that sort of stuff. It's all affected.
So the lunar cycle. I know we talked a little bit about biodynamics with some other winemakers.
Yeah,
love that.
It's really important. And when we put certain applications on, and then the stars are those little seeds flying about. And of course, if you show me one person who hasn't had a peek at their stars in their lives, I'll go boo.
Yeah.
And that really does affect. It does affect how, you know, we, for instance, we try to pick the grapes on a fruit day. The grapes definitely taste differently on a fruit day to a root day. So there are 4 days: fruit, flower, root, and root and leaf.
Okay.
And it's all the stars and the configuration, etc. So if you have your beloved wine, Loveblock Sauvignon Blanc, for instance, and you tasted yesterday and it was beautiful, and today it just tastes a little bit, it almost goes a little bit more, you know, a bit more acidic and a bit more stroppy, shall I say, then go on the internet and Google biodynamic calendar, and then that will tell you whether you're on a fruit day, root day, leaf day, or flower day. Yeah. So go for
even when you're tasting the wine, this cycle affects.
Yeah.
I have not heard that before.
I can see it quite clearly when I visit the US. You know, when we, for 5 days in a row, you taste the same wine, say four times a day. And sometimes they're just spectacular, icy cold, 7 o'clock in the morning. And other days they just, you know, on the root days, I feel they go a little more grungy and a little bit more bold. Then on the leaf days, they just almost more stroppy, you know, they kick back. But they just really open up on those fruit days. So check it out. It really makes a difference.
I will. So tell me about the TEE Sauvignon Blanc, because this is so interesting. I've never heard of what you're doing with the replacement for the sulfites or the sulfur as used as a preservative, but you're using a tea extract, a tannin extract from tea, and I'd love to know more about how you came upon doing this and what it does for the wine.
So if you taste Loveblock Sauvignon Blanc straight up, you'll see that it hasn't got the big flavors that's usually associated, not this one, so it's softer. So we think that organic grape growing and organic winemaking, because there's a lot of things you don't use, you're not allowed to use, so the inputs are very little, and it's softer. So our next question was, well, if we don't add sulfites, the little bit that we do, what will happen then? And that was the question. So we were chasing the flavors. So what will happen to the flavors? At the same time, we became aware of a product in the catalogue of one of our suppliers, you know, that supplies with yeasts and sulfites and all sorts of things in the winery. They have this product that they've always used on rotten grapes. And it happens in wineries, you know, I mean, in vineyards. If the weather turns a little bit too humid, then you get this rot. And it's a small part of a cluster. Anyway, so that product blocks the enzyme that causes oxidation. So we figured it must work. So we had a little trial run in 2018. And the product is tannin extracted from green tea leaves by a really high grade steam method. And it's basically pharmaceutical grade. And so every time the wine is exposed to oxygen, it gets a dollop of this tannin. And we chose green tea. We looked at several other teas, tannins. We chose the green tea tannin because it has least interference with flavor. It doesn't have any flavor transfer. It doesn't have any color transfer. But the effect is, so on this side, you'll see Loveblock Sauvignon Blanc, and on this side is the tea. You see, there's quite a difference in color.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah. And if you have one of these in front of you, you'll see that it is quite different. So the first thing we noted was sort of almost an agave note on the nose. Can you get that? And people automatically, when you hear green tea, people say, oh yeah, I can taste the green tea. But it's not really the green tea, it's a vineyard note. So we did a controlled trial in the research winery where we had, under strictly controlled conditions. So the only things that changed was all from the same vineyard, 2 bins, made exactly the same way. The only changes were the standard. The one had no SO2 or tannins, so no preservative. The one had sulfites, and it was tasted exactly like Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. And the one had the tea tannin. The one with the tea tannin and the no addition had the same notes.
Wow.
The one where we had no tannin or no SO2 in obviously went off quite quickly. But here you get that sort of a agave note and more things like, for me, saffron and a bit of cumin and mandarin today, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Mm. And then in your mouth you get that kickback of peach. In our little area, where our vineyards are, so we're an estate proposition, so we only use our own grapes.
Okay.
It has a beautiful peach flavor, but we're surrounded by big companies, and unfortunately all the vineyards from there go into their big blends, so no one sees this beautiful peach flavor that you get there.
It really is
it's
lovely.
Quite different, and it's not oxidized.
No, and the color right away, I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah,
I noticed. Yeah, and that's just from using the tea
tannin.
Extract. Okay.
Yeah. So it is a legitimate, it's a winery product made by a company in Italy, and it's got all the accreditations, food regulations, wine regulations, that sort of stuff. So it's just really quite interesting to see what it does to flavor. I think it makes a big difference. So if you were to have these two in your hand,
what a great side-by-side tasting.
This one got a small bit of SO2. This one got the tannin. They're like two completely different wines.
And so changes the color. Obviously has a little effect on the taste and the aromas that we smelled. But is the idea that this is a healthier option than sulfites, or just you wanted to try something different as an experimental?
Yeah, as we've learned with organic winemaking, is that you can't use a lot of the stuff that you would usually use. So we intervene very little. So we use very little. So it's not as halfway. It's a step away from natural wine, because we did add the tannin, so we can't say it's natural wine. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But we're purely doing it for flavor. I stay away from health and wine because it's always an issue. We have to be very careful what we say.
Yeah, and there's studies on either side.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But what it does do is to give you a much softer palate.
Mm-hmm.
Much softer,
really beautiful.
Almost a more viscous palate.
And are all of these? I know for sure. I've had your Sauvignon Blanc in my market. Are all of these already that we're tasting through available in the U.S. pretty widely?
Yeah, they are.
Okay, they are. Wonderful.
I know you're in Pennsylvania, aren't you?
Maryland, so not far.
Okay, yeah, they're definitely there. And the tea, you'll have to have a look at your local store. That's not as widely available, but I know that wine.com has it, so it's easy enough to buy from there.
And so, just to give folks an idea of the scope of the winery, case-wise, how many cases are you producing? How limited are these different wines that we're tasting?
So we would be classified as a small winery in the US. We make about 49,000 cases.
Okay.
Because the US is a big place, you can't only go in with 500 bottles.
Right.
And we grow all our own grapes, so that will be the natural cap when all the vineyards are, when there's no more space to expand into.
Right.
That's really important to us because, as I say, you can see year in and year out how the flavors differ. So you really have a look at the terroir, the climate. And we control the viticulture because it's so easy to do something wrong with organics, and then you lose accreditation and it takes 4 years to get it back. So yeah, we've got a very dedicated team looking after that.
Yeah, and I wanted to show on the bottle itself. I know it seems that New Zealand has its own designation that is on the back label. As far as, I think one of the things for consumers that I hear when I do events and going around the country is that it's confusing for people to go into a store and look at bottles and know if a wine is organic or biodynamic or sustainable, and there's so many terms.
So that very same wine, for me, has got the organic accreditation to the rest of the world.
Okay.
Yeah. It's because the
Interesting.
US organic rules are slightly different, and they deem it's because we use this tannin that hasn't been registered as an organic product yet, and that's the
Interesting.
difficulty. You'll find
Okay.
very little product that's fully organic USDA because
Right.
you cannot add any SO2, and the wine's quite variable then. We're
Gotcha.
hoping that they would accredit this tannin, and
Okay.
then we can put that organic thing on there. I think you just have to trust the producer. You can also taste, it's
Yes.
generally a little bit more soft. You will also, another thing you can have a look at is somewhere on the label. Let me just find a US label. It will say made with organically grown grapes. So
Yes.
that's what you look out for.
Yes, it is on the back of my bottle.
So
Yeah.
look out. That's a lookout. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Quick question for you, just talking about Sauvignon Blanc in general, New Zealand, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I feel like I love that you're really trying to keep these as dry as possible, as natural as possible, of course organic, you're trying out these different preservative options. But I feel like there's a certain part of the market that the wines are almost getting sweet. Some of the Sauvignon Blancs, almost like overly, like, whoa, like what is happening? And I know one of the things you wanted to talk about is the different styles of Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
Are you trying to sort of, rein that back in and have a more leaner style, I guess?
So, when you sniff Sauvignon Blanc, you often smell jalapeno or asparagus or bell pepper. So that's caused by one flavor component. And in New Zealand, the concentration of that in our grapes is just really high.
Okay.
And I can speak from experience because we made the yardstick after all. That's called the pyrazines. And, you can enhance them in the vineyard, and you can enhance the fruit, the peach, etc., by other means in the winery. So we don't do any of those. In fact, we're trying to pull the green flavors back. So if you
Gotcha.
have the straight up Loveblock Sauvignon Blanc, of course it's Sauvignon Blanc and the herbaceous flavors, but you'll get more peach, pineapple, lemon, and so on, as opposed to asparagus and those flavors.
Yeah.
I think the big thing is that, in my view, sulfites also has a lot to do with the big flavors and the sharpness of Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. Because when you add sulfites, it's like it puts a little blanket over the flavors at that point in time that you bottle it. So we've now done that controlled experiment. So I can tell you, the wines are a lot more. It feels a lot more acidic, and it just captures those flavors quite quickly. And because you add it before bottling, the flavors are not quite developed yet. So it does tend to taste more green than not. So if you let it flow, then you see it's showing itself more beautifully, as it does in this tea.
Love that. Yep, both of these whites, absolutely love. And in the beginning of the show, we tasted the main Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, which is also delicious. And I think getting these two and tasting them side by side, the tea and the regular sulfite one, would be such a fun activity. To have friends over and have a dinner. In Maryland here, we're all about our seafood, and I feel like these wines would be really great with seafood as well. So if you get to this market, let me know, and I will have my husband make you some great crab, because that's our thing. Maryland crabs is a big deal here. Yes, that's the best. Now, people seem to really 60-40 gravitate a lot towards red wine in this country. And so I think it's great that we also have your Pinot Noir. Now, while all of these wines that we've tasted so far are from the Marlborough region in the north part of the South Island, this is in the southern part of the South Island, central Otago, which, if I remember correctly from my SOM training, this is one of the southernmost wine regions in the world. And so I thought we would have that as our finale in the tasting. But so you own vineyards both in the Marlborough and then also down in central Otago as well?
That's right. Yeah, we do. You know, I think for us, we think it's important to have Pinot Noir from Central because the intensity of flavor there is just quite special because, you know, it's a little bit like growing grapes in Aspen, big, huge alpine region and with lakes and, you know, snowing in winter and then being quite warm in summer. So it's semi-arid. And I think the flavors we get from there are quite generous. So
wonderful.
Here I'm pouring it.
It smells wonderful, lots of cherry and warm notes. I love that.
Lots of cherry and just a little bit of smokiness. And I think this will be perfect for your turkey. Thanksgiving's coming up.
Oh,
isn't it?
yes. Perfect. And that's coming up. So I think I love the idea of having the Sauvignon Blanc and the Pinot Noir as, you know, because sometimes people want white, sometimes people want red, but both of these wines, the Sauvignon Blanc, the Pinot Gris for that matter, have great fruit, the acidity to match what's on the table. But Pinot, I always think of as just the perfect Thanksgiving turkey. Is kind of neutral if you think of it, but it's a lean meat.
Neutral,
so you don't want Cabernet Sauvignon.
Not in the middle of the day.
No. So tell me about your take on Pinot.
So, again, it's really placing emphasis on fruit. This little vineyard is also certified organic. We grow 5 clones just to give it a range of flavors, you know, from the bright red flavors to the deep berries and then to the big black cherries. And then we use clone 5 in there just to give it some more structure. So all up, I think it's an easy wine to drink, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
It's just all that great fruit on the palate, enough acidity that's going to be food friendly, but soft and round on the finish.
Just a little bit of tannin at the back. We use a very light touch on the oak. Otherwise, you've got to really put it away for years and years and years, and it's very hard to do these days, isn't it?
Yes, I think the studies are, you know, people buy today what they're going to drink tonight. We do, you know,
Right.
Most people are not laying a lot of things down, so I think people do appreciate a wine that's ready to drink, but that can also have some time. But I love your idea of the Thanksgiving. And then just to take a nod, I don't know, have you had a chance to go out to the Willamette Valley of Oregon?
I have been there twice, yes.
Yes. So one of the things that I experienced there, and a couple weeks ago we had Jim Burnett from Willamette Valley Vineyards, and then also Melissa Burr from Stoller Vineyards. But one of the things that happened when I visited was I tried salmon with Pinot Noir, and
Amazing.
This was years ago, and I had never thought to do that. It just seemed, fish and red, you know, the way back when I tried this the first time, it was eye-opening, and I think this would also be, I love having salmon for the healthy aspects and the taste of it and all of those things, so I eat it quite often, but this would be such a great pairing with that as well.
I think it's quite a versatile wine, you know, you can take it from even the fishy fish, and then salmon, right through to, you know, lamb and those lentil dishes that I cook such a lot of these days, right through to your big steak. And I learned a little trick from a chef at the CIA one year. He, you know, have a sip of your wine, have a bit of your steak, then put some lemon on the steak and see how much better the wine tastes.
I love that. Yeah, because the acidity matches the acidity in the wine, and then you bring out more flavors in the wine. That's so great. That's where my husband went as well, so that's fabulous. Now, as speaking of schooling, I did see, and maybe just to like round out this interview, because I know, thank you so much for your time here, I did see that you are a mentor to other women who are getting into the wine business and winemaking, and maybe you just want to touch on that. I think that's fabulous. It's so amazing here in the U.S. to see so many more women entering all facets really of the wine business, but certainly winemaking, I love to see that.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, through my lifetime, which is a long one, when I was young, there were certain expectations that were just put on a woman. And we work really hard to change some things, but still, it's sometimes the assumed characteristic and the assumed duties that's placed on women, and sometimes it's just a look or an exclusion, and people, it's most often unconscious bias, and I don't care, I call it out.
Great, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
That's what I love about being older. You just don't care.
You're not old.
Anymore.
You're not old.
Yeah.
It is true, though. I mean, as we mature, I guess, if you want to use that word, you get more confident to just say what you believe, and you're not as worried about what people think of you, which is very freeing. It's very freeing.
I can now be that eccentric old lady, and drive my car for 50 years if I feel like it, which is exactly what I'm doing.
I love it. Well, you, Erica, you've been such a breath of fresh air. I've loved tasting all of these wines. Loveblock wines, and I will put on my show page a link to your website, and we'll be putting this out everywhere so people can see and hear all the great wisdom that you shared with us. And I just thank you so much for joining us here on The Sipping Point. And maybe we could do a little toast and just say cheers from Maryland to you in New Zealand.
Maryland. And
cheers.
Happy Thanksgiving. I know it's a little early, but happiness to America.
Yeah, pick up your Loveblock wines for Thanksgiving because it's coming up very quickly. All right, thank you so much.